So full disclosure, guys, I'm definitely wearing my lucky superhero underwear right now, just so you all know. I'm also wearing, for those of you in the back that might not be able to see it, this is my light up Iron Man t-shirt. It's the arc reactor, the glowy thing in Iron Man's chest. And on this foot, I'm wearing one Iron Man sock. And on this foot, I'm wearing one Captain America sock. Mostly because I love both characters so much, I can never decide which one pair of socks to wear, so I wear one of each to make sure that everybody feels loved. I don't want to play favorites. What you can gather from all of this, guys, is that I am a huge nerd. Comics, comic book movies, conventions, dressing up, all things that I have proudly done, and if we're being honest, will probably do again. But comics are a lot more than that for me. They're not just entertainment, they're personal. And the characters that I love and interact with have actually impacted my life in a very real way. I'll give you an example. I don't know how many of you have seen The Avengers, so no worries, no spoilers, but I've seen it 17 times in theaters, so not to brag. But something happens at the end of the movie that's really traumatizing for Tony Stark. We then see him in Iron Man 3, which takes place afterwards, eating lunch with a friend, and something happens that triggers him. He starts hyperventilating, his eyes are bulging out of his head, and he sprints out of the restaurant thinking he's been poisoned. He hasn't been poisoned, he's just having an anxiety attack. And for someone that's dealt with anxiety, especially here in college, that was really important for me. Because seeing a character that I look up to and love so much go through something so vulnerable and so human really normalized the idea of anxiety. And it helped make me feel more comfortable. If Tony Stark can have an anxiety attack and still save the world, like, I can still have an anxiety attack and take my test on Friday, you know? But let's talk about superheroes, guys. You see behind me probably quite a few faces that you recognize. Maybe you've seen them in the movies, maybe TV shows, maybe you've seen people with t-shirts of them, or hats, or mugs, or socks, and maybe you've seen little kids dress up like them for Halloween. But how many of these characters can you name as quickly as you could on the first slide? How many of them have you seen as Halloween costumes for kids? Or, I think most importantly, how many of them have you seen on t-shirts, or hats, or socks? Because as someone that has been looking for Black Widow socks for like 2 years, I can tell you that it's not because I'm not looking hard enough. It's because they're not made with the same frequency that the previous character's merchandise is made. And I think this is just a small hint at a really indicative problem of representation in comics. Usually I bring this up to my friends pretty often, they'll tell you. And the response that I get is, okay, Bria, that's fine, but I go see superhero movies for explosions and hot dudes in tights. Same audience, I do the same thing. But I will tell you that seeing superhero movies has been really important for me. There are a lot of really interesting political examples of comics. They're not just for entertainment. So they've been a place for societal critique and a way for people that might not normally engage in a political discussion to be able to approach it in a way that's accessible for them and a way that interests them. There are a lot of really great examples of it, but I think my favorite comes from the X-Men. You see on this slide some pictures from a plotline that was released in the late 90s about something called the Legacy Virus. It was a virus that was killing off the mutant population at an alarming rate. But because it was only impacting the mutant population, you know, the minority group with fewer rights than everybody else, no one really cared or acknowledged it as a problem. It wasn't until the virus mutated and started impacting non-mutants that all of a sudden everybody started to acknowledge the Legacy Virus as an issue. If this sounds familiar to you, you're probably correct in assuming that it parallels the epidemic of AIDS in the late 80s, where the homosexual male community was dying at an alarming rate from HIV and AIDS, but because they were part of a marginalized community, no one really paid much attention to it. It wasn't until people that weren't a part of that community, you know, the majority group with all of the rights, started getting AIDS, that suddenly, okay, the president can talk about it, the government can talk about it, and it's an actual problem. But it's not just the X-Men that deal with political issues like this. Whether it's Iron Man talking about a critique of a hyper-militarized capitalism society or our place in the Middle East, or it's Captain America fighting the good fight between the role of privacy for individual citizens or a surveillance government keeping us safe from unseen terrorism, or it's Batman who's trying to dismantle corrupt police, political, and judicial systems for a city that he loves. Comics have been saying something more for a very long time. And the characters that we interact with impact our lives in a very real way and reconstruct the cultural narratives that we tell ourselves. but this is especially true when it comes to kids who are watching superhero movies not just for costumes, for Halloween, or for merchandise, but for heroes and role models and people to look up to and model their behavior after. And so it can be really hard for a kid to look up on screen and see someone that they want to be like if no one on the screen looks like them. There's science behind this too. If you've ever taken an intro to psychology course, you've probably learned about social cognitive theory. It's essentially a learning theory proposed by Bandura that talks about how we learn. So if we watch someone perform a behavior, we're going to try to replicate it. It has three main parts: identification, outcome expectations, and self-efficacy. Identification goes back to that first part that I was telling you about, where, I see Tony Stark, he's funny, he's sarcastic, he has attractive friends, he's smart, and he deals with anxiety. All things that I have experienced at some capacity in my life. So I identify with him, and I pay attention to him. That brings us to the second part of social cognitive theory, outcome expectations. If I'm paying attention to Tony Stark, I'm going to be looking for one of two things that come from his behavior: punishment or reward. If we see Tony like we do in Iron Man 2, drinking himself to death, pushing away his friends, spiraling into an emotional void of nothingness, that behavior is punished in the film, so I'm not going to want to replicate it because I don't want to be punished, right? But if we see Tony Stark reaching out to his friends, asking for help, fighting for his life, or fighting for what he believes in, that behavior is rewarded. And so I'm going to want to do that. Because in every superhero movie, we know how the formula goes, right? The hero struggles, but then they pull themselves back up, they save the day, they get the girl, they beat up the bad guy, they win. But that reward is important because it emphasizes that this behavior is something that you want to replicate. Which brings us to the third part of social cognitive theory, self-efficacy, which is essentially the belief that you can do the thing. So if I look at Tony Stark and I identify with him and I'm paying attention to him, and then I look and I see, okay, he can fight through the anxiety on the hard days, or he can stand up for what he believes in. As long as I believe that I'm able to do that as well, then I'm going to try. And this is where representation is key. Because when kids or 21-year-old college women are watching comic book movies and looking for what to replicate or what to invest in, having someone to identify with is key. And if you're looking at the screen for someone to learn from and you don't see anyone that you identify with, you're not going to learn those behaviors and you're not going to feel like you have a place or the ability to be a hero like everyone else. It's important to acknowledge the progress that still needs to be made, but I think it's also important to acknowledge the progress that already has been made. We've seen a lot of progress and diversity coming through in comics as opposed to in the movies. So in terms of racial diversity in the comics, we're starting to see characters like Spider-Man, who is now a biracial boy named Miles Morales. Captain America, the literal embodiment of patriotism in the US of A, is now a black man. When we think of gender, characters that have classically been considered very powerful and masculine and godlike, like Thor, Thor is now a woman in the comics. And when we think of characters like Ms. Marvel, who are still feminine and powerful, she's also Muslim, so we're starting to see some religious diversity in comics as well. When we think of sexuality, we're starting to see more bisexual and gay characters, some married gay couples as well. And we have Deadpool, who is pansexual in the comics and in the movies. I hear laughs. Some of you definitely know who Deadpool is. And being pansexual is part of an identity that not a lot of people have even heard of yet. So that's bringing visibility to a community that might not have normally had a voice. And that brings us to what I think is one of the most interesting aspects of representation in comics, which is ability. Because when you all think of superheroes, you probably think of strength and power. But when you think of disabilities, you might not think of it that way. So the character you see behind me, standing next to my boyfriend Tony Stark, is Blue Ear. He's in the blue and white. Now, Blue Ear was a character created because there was a boy who was a huge comic book fan. He was hearing impaired, so he had to wear blue hearing aids. But he stopped wearing them, and he told his mom, and I quote, "Heroes don't have blue ears." So the folks at Marvel took it upon themselves to create this character, aptly named Blue Ear, I think, who is a superhero, does fight crime, but he is hearing impaired, wears hearing aids, and uses that as an asset as opposed to a weakness. And it's stories like these that I think are so powerful, and it's stories like these I want to see more of in the comics that we're reading and in the movies that we're watching. Because if we have heroes on print and on screen that are representing everyone and fighting for what they believe in, then everyone feels like they have a chance to be a hero too. Thanks.